Hi boys and girls, Mrs. Antonucci here. I hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. So this week in writing, we have been talking about fairy tales and the different elements of fairy tales. So while I'm reading today, I want you to think about the different elements of fairy tales. Think in your head, what elements am I noticing? So when it's time to answer your question, you'll be able to know, okay, I know there is magic in this story, or maybe there's heroes or good versus evil characters. All right, Rapunzel. Long ago, there lived a man and a woman who had no children. As year followed year, this was their only sorrow. Then one spring, the wife felt her dress growing tight around her waist. Joyfully, she said to her husband, "We are going to have a child at last." The wife liked to sit by a small window at the back of their house and look down into a beautiful garden. Flowers grew there, and rare fruits and herbs of every kind. The garden belonged to a sorceress, who had enclosed it on all sides with a high wall. No one ever dared to enter. One day, as the wife sat by the window, her eyes fixed on a bed of Rapunzel. This herb looked so luxurious, so green, so thick and fresh that she felt a terrible longing to taste it. Day after day, her craving grew until she began to suffer. She became pale and said to her husband, "If I cannot eat some of that Rapunzel from the garden behind our house, I'm going to die." Her husband was alarmed to hear such desperate words. He loved his wife dearly and saw no choice but to bring her some of that Rapunzel. 10 times, 20 times he circled the garden wall but found neither door nor gate. So, lowering himself through the window at the back of the house, he climbed down into the sorceress's garden. Quickly he pulled up as much Rapunzel as he could and scrambled back up through the window. His wife made a salad and devoured it with a wild hunger. Yet the next day her craving for Rapunzel was even fiercer than before. Once again, the husband made his way down the wall and into the garden, but this time as he reached for the Rapunzel, the sorceress rose up before him. "How dare you come here to steal my Rapunzel?" she cried. "Oh, it will serve you ill." "Have mercy on me," the man begged. "My wife is carrying our child. She has seen your Rapunzel from our window and thought that she would die unless she could eat some. What am I to do?" The sorceress considered his words. "If what you say is true, you may take the Rapunzel that you need, but in return, you must give me the child that your wife will have." The frightened husband did not know what to say. Rather than see his wife hurt, he agreed to the demand, and when the child was born, the sorceress appeared in the room. She named the baby girl Rapunzel after her garden and carried her away. The sorceress cared for the baby, seeing to her every need. Rapunzel grew to be a child of beauty with pale skin and flowing red gold hair. When she reached the age of 12, the sorceress led her to the forest to live in the highest tower. The tower was a great column rising in the middle of the woods. Although it looked narrow on the outside, on the inside it was large with many elegant rooms. Yet no door led to this tower, and its only window was at the very top. When the sorceress wished to enter, she stood below the window and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then Rapunzel would unpin her silky braids, wind them around a hook on the window frame, and let them tumble to the ground. The sorceress would grab hold of them and hoist herself up. For years, Rapunzel lived alone in her rooms above the treetops, visited only by the sorceress. Then one day, a king's son came riding through the woods. As he neared the tower, he heard a voice sweeter than he had ever known. It was Rapunzel singing to the forest birds. Charmed by her voice, the prince fell deeply in love. He circled the tower 10 times, 20 times, but found no entrance. "How strange this tower is," he said to himself. Day after day, the prince returned, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl whose sweet singing had moved him so. One morning he saw the sorceress appear below the window and call up, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." At once the prince knew how he too might enter the tower. The next evening he called under the window and said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel's hair came billowing down, and the king's son took hold of it and pulled himself up. "Heaven preserve me!" cried Rapunzel when the prince stepped through her window, for she had never set eyes on a man before. "Your singing was so beautiful," the prince told her. "I knew I must see your face, or my heart could have no peace." Rapunzel saw that he was young and handsome, and in her own heart she felt a happiness she had never known. When the prince, grown bold, proposed to marry her, she said yes. They held a ceremony in the tower, and every evening after that he returned. The sorceress, who only came by day, knew nothing of his visits. One day when the sorceress entered the tower, Rapunzel said, "If you please, stepmother, help me with my dress. It is growing so tight around my waist. It doesn't want to fit me anymore." Instantly, the sorceress understood what Rapunzel did not. "Oh, you wicked child," she shrieked. "What did I hear you say? I thought I kept you safe from the whole world, but you have betrayed me." In a rage, she grabbed the braids and coils of Rapunzel's silky hair and cut them off. She sent the miserable girl to a wild country to live alone with no one to care for her. After some months in the wilderness, Rapunzel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Once the sorceress had cast Rapunzel and thrown her out of the tower, she gathered the cut-off hair and fastened it to the window hook. That evening when the prince called up, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the hair cascade down. The poor prince pulled himself up to the window only to be confronted by the sorceress, her eyes wild with fury. "So you have come to fetch your dearest darling," she cried. "Well, you shall never see her again. Rapunzel is lost forever." Struck with grief, the prince let go of the braids and he plummeted to the ground. Although the fall should have killed him and hurt him, the prince lived, but his eyes were hurt. He could no longer see. Blind, he stumbled from place to place, eating nothing but roots and berries, thinking of nothing but the loss of his beloved wife. After a year of wandering in such misery, he came into the same wilderness where Rapunzel was living with her children. One day he heard a voice so dear to him, he rushed toward it. Rapunzel saw him and opened her arms wide. As Rapunzel embraced the prince, 2 of her tears fell into his eyes. Suddenly his vision grew clear, and once again the prince could see. He gazed at Rapunzel and their 2 beautiful children. The prince led his family out of the wilderness towards his kingdom, where they were received with great joy. And there they lived a long life, happy and content. The end. So boys and girls, now it is your turn to think, okay, what story elements, what elements of a fairy tale did I find today? Happy writing!